At my graduation party, after years of sacrificing myself for others, I finally felt like I had achieved something of my own. The cake was the symbol of that victory. And then my nephew, looking to my brother for approval, pushed him off the table. The frosting splattered on my dress and the candles went out on the floor. And what I heard wasn't an "I'm sorry," it was my brother's laughter. The same person whose new car I was paying for. And in that second, as I held the knife to cut the cake and watched everyone laughing, something inside me broke. Not with sadness, but with clarity. The next day, instead of crying, I went to the bank and canceled every penny of the car loan. And that decision, that small, quiet, powerful decision, was the beginning of the end of the person I was forced to be. If you've ever felt invisible to your own family, this story is for you.
You just finished your big celebration. But instead of recognition and applause, there's betrayal. A sibling's laughter as your graduation cake hits the floor, and you realize you've been playing the responsible one role for far too long. In this raw, emotional story, we follow Anna, who finally draws a line after years of being the family's financial and emotional anchor, only to break free and discover what self-respect really means. Her brother, Carlos, faces the fallout, and months later, he shows up with more than just apologies. He brings the first genuine steps toward change. This isn't a fairy tale fix. It's a real journey of hurt, confrontation, accountability, and the question, can family ever be rebuilt on adult terms? If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever silently carried resentment, or wondered when it was your turn to be heard, subscribe now for more powerful family stories that don't shy away from the hard truths. Leave a comment. Have you ever had to walk away from a relationship to be respected again? Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story that holds up a mirror to the quiet pain behind the smiles. The room was filled with laughter, flashes of light and sweet scents. And his graduation cake was the centerpiece of the table, white, decorated with berries, a symbol of a victory she had achieved alone. For the first time, she felt the sacrifice of years of work had been worth it. Carlos, her brother, had arrived late, but as always, he captured the attention of his mother and the guests with his outgoing manner. When Anna was called to the toast, he made a joke about the family nerd who finally got her diploma, drawing uncomfortable laughter. Anna tried to hide her discomfort, but felt her old embarrassment well up. Since childhood, it had been like this. He was the funny one, she was the responsible one. Amidst the laughter, her nephew, Mateus, climbed onto a chair. "Auntie, look!" he shouted, before pushing the cake with both hands. The cake fell, smashing to the floor. The sound of the plate breaking seemed to echo louder than any music. There was a second of silence, followed by Carlos's loud laughter. "Relax, Anna, it's just a cake," he said, still laughing, as everyone around looked on in embarrassment. Her face burned. She tried to respond, but the words were lost. Donalina approached, and instead of scolding her grandson, simply said, "Naughty boy! Anna, don't make a fuss." The lump in her throat tightened. Anna smiled reluctantly, cleaned the floor in silence, and realized that no one was looking at her anymore. Everyone had gone back to talking, as if nothing had happened.
At the end of the party, when everyone had left, Anna looked at the remains of the cake and felt a bitter taste that wasn't from the whipped cream. The old pain of being ignored, ridiculed, erased, resurfaced with a vengeance. That night, she understood that the cake wasn't just a ruined dessert. It was a symbol of everything the family had thrown away over the years. She put away her gifts, washed her hands, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't cry. The emptiness inside her was different, cold, but clear. It was the beginning of something. The sound of her brother's laughter still echoed in her mind, but along with it came a thought. This will not happen again. As she lay in bed, Anna stared at the ceiling and remembered all the times Carlos had laughed at her expense. When she'd paid his debt, when she'd helped him with his car, when he'd run out of money for helping her. Each memory was a wound. But that night, an inner voice, calm and firm, told her, "It's finished." The clock read 2 a.m. when Anna turned out the lights. In the darkness, she swore to herself that she wouldn't tolerate anyone who belittled her again. For the first time, she didn't feel guilty. She felt relief. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt humiliated by someone in your own family and had to swallow your pride just to keep the peace? Then this channel is for you. Here, every story is a mirror, sometimes painful, but always real. Sign up now and follow stories that touch us deeply and make us think before forgiving. The next day dawned gray. Anna awoke to the sound of notifications in the family group. The messages arrived one after the other. Laughter, memes of falling cakes, jokes about the dramatic aunt. She read in silence, her heart sinking. Not a word of apology, not a gesture of empathy, only mockery. He closed the app and left his phone on the table. The coffee was growing cold in the cup, and the strong, bitter smell seemed to accompany the taste of disappointment. He looked out the window and thought about all the times he'd believed that family is everything. He was beginning to realize that sometimes family is also the place where you get hurt the most. The silence in the apartment was deafening. Her prom dress, still hanging on the chair, contrasted with the pile of dirty dishes from the night before. Anna sat on the sofa and took a deep breath. She had two options: pretend nothing had happened, as always, or do something that would change everything. For a moment, she hesitated. She thought about her mother, her brother, how much she'd always sacrificed to keep the peace. But then she remembered the falling cake, Carlos's laughter, Helena's blank look. Anger replaced doubt. She got up, went to her room, and grabbed the envelope with the receipts for Carlos's car loan.
With each page she reviewed, she also saw the months she'd worked double time to pay for something that wasn't even hers. "Enough," he murmured. She put on a blouse, tied up her hair, and went outside. The rain was beginning to fall lightly, cold, but Anna felt her chest warm, a new warmth of resolve. At the bank, the clerk asked if she was sure about canceling the debit. Anna looked at the screen and smiled for the first time in weeks. "Yes, I am." She signed the papers firmly. When she left, she took a deep breath. It was as if an invisible weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Back outside, the world seemed quieter. The rain was getting heavier, but she didn't care. She walked slowly, feeling the cold water run down her arms. It wasn't punishment, it was cleansing. Each drop washed away a piece of her guilt. When she got home, her cell phone vibrated non-stop. Calls from Carlos, messages from her mother. Anna switched it to silent mode and left it on the table. She made herself some tea, opened the window, and looked out at the dark sky. For the first time, solitude didn't scare her. It was hers. She sat in the armchair, wrapped in the blanket, and thought, if I could cancel the financing, I can cancel anything, even the pain. The next morning arrived with clear skies, but Anna's body felt heavy. The loan cancellation still resonated like a liberation and also like a bomb about to explode. Her cell phone was full of missed calls from Carlos and messages from her mother. Each unanswered ring was a reminder. She had finally broken the cycle. He made the coffee and watched the steam slowly rise from the cup. It was as if he were watching his own thoughts evaporate. For the first time, the silence of the apartment felt peaceful, not empty. It was a new kind of peace, one that came at the price of solitude. At 9 o'clock, the phone rang. She let it ring. At 10, again. On the third try, she answered. "Anna, what's this story about canceling the car loan?" Carlos shouted from the other end without even greeting her. Anna took a deep breath and replied, "It's over. I'm not your bank." From the other side, a mocking laugh. Are you crazy? It was just a child's game. Are you so full of yourself because you graduated? Anna closed her eyes, feeling her anger rise. It wasn't about the cake, Carlos. It was about everything that came before. I'm tired. The silence that followed was more deafening than the scream. Before he could respond, she hung up. Her hands were shaking, but her heart was beating steadily. There was no regret, just a necessary emptiness, the space that precedes reconstruction. She put her phone in the drawer, like locking away a ghost, and went to work.
During lunch, she confided in Marina what she had done. Her friend looked at her with an admiring smile. "You took your time, but you did what you had to. Now all you have to do is stop blaming yourself." Anna chuckled. Guilty was what she had always been. Free was what I was still learning to be. That night, silence returned. But this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. Anna put on some soft music, cooked for herself, and lit a candle. Small gestures of new beginnings. The flame flickered, casting shadows on the wall, shadows of a past that was beginning to fade. Before falling asleep, she received one last message from Carlos. "You'll regret it." She read it, deleted it, and put her phone away. For the first time, she slept soundly, without feeling responsible for anyone but herself. While the world went on outside, inside the small apartment, Anna took her first real step towards freedom, and the loneliness that came with it. The sound of rain hitting the window woke her before dawn. The sound was insistent, constant, almost like a memory. Anna got up slowly, grabbed a blanket, and watched the gray sky dissolve against the glass. She was calm until the phone rang again. It was Donna Elena. "My daughter, what have you done to your brother?" Her voice was firm, but filled with disapproval. Anna closed her eyes, already anticipating what was to come. "I just stopped supporting him, Mom." From the other side, a long sigh. "You've always been so harsh. He's your brother, Anna. Family doesn't abandon." Those words hit home. For years, Anna had heard the same phrase, and for years she believed it. But now the phrase sounded different, almost cruel. "Mom, the one who abandons you is the one who only shows up to ask. I've never abandoned anyone. I just stopped letting myself be used." On the other side, her mother's silence was more painful than any scream. "You speak as if you were a saint. If your father hadn't died young, none of this would have happened." The old guilt tried to invade Anna's chest, but this time she took a deep breath. "Maybe, Mom, the problem is that we never learned to listen to each other." The call ended without goodbyes. The sound of the rain seemed to grow louder, as if the whole world was mourning what Anna couldn't. She sat on the sofa, her cold hands gripping the cup. Tears came, silent, not of regret, but of grief. Grief for the family Anna wanted to have, and that might never exist. Marina showed up late in the afternoon, unannounced. She brought cheese bread and hugs. "You did what any exhausted woman would do," she said, with the serenity of someone who understands unspoken pain. Anna smiled weakly. "I just wish my mother understood me." Marina replied, "She may never understand, but you can understand yourself. It's a start."
As they talked, the cell phone vibrated on the table. Carlos had sent a short message. "Congratulations, you managed to destroy the family." Anna looked, took a deep breath, and passed out. There was nothing more to say. Night fell. The rain stopped, but the smell of wet earth filled the apartment, bringing a bittersweet sensation. Anna opened the window and looked out at the empty street. The world outside seemed clean, new, and in a way, the same was true inside her. With a light heart and teary eyes, she murmured to herself, "If loving myself is selfish, then so be it." And in that instant, for For the first time, the word selfishness sounded like freedom. The following days were long and heavy. At work, Anna tried to stay focused, but the sound of her phone notifications, unread messages from her mother and brother, accompanied her like a constant echo. Each ring was a reminder that the cut still hurt. It was a pain without blood, but deep, old. During lunch, Marina noticed her distant gaze. "You seem somewhere else," she commented, placing her hand over hers. Anna sighed. "I guess I'm trying to get used to the emptiness that comes after breaking free." Marina smiled empathetically. Freedom hurts before it heals. That night, Anna opened her laptop and came across photos from the graduation. In all of them, Carlos was smiling. She was just trying. Seeing the cake on the floor, her heart sunk, not because of the loss of the sweet treat, but because of the symbolism. It hadn't been an accident. It had been the culmination of years of disdain. The tears came without warning. She wept silently, not for the humiliation, but for the time wasted trying to be loved in an impossible way. When the tears stopped, something inside her felt lighter, as if the crying had cleansed not only her eyes, but her soul as well. The next day, she avoided checking social media. I already knew what I'd find: jokes, indirect comments, and looks disguised as irony. It was easier for the world to mock a weakened woman than to accept her freedom. Still, she took a deep breath and went on with her day. At the office, her boss called her to praise a report. It was a small but significant moment. There, no one saw her as Carlos's sister or Helena's daughter, just as Anna. For the first time, she felt pride, without guilt. On his way home, he passed a bakery. He stopped in front of the window and stared at a cake identical to the one he had made at graduation. For a moment, he considered buying another one, just for himself. He didn't. Not yet. But the thought was the first sign that one day he could celebrate again, the right way. That night, he turned on the radio and listened to an old song, the kind that plays in the background. He smiled at the thought that even amidst the chaos, there was still beauty. Maybe starting over is just that, finding beauty in the midst of the mess.
She fell asleep to the soft sound of music, feeling something in her heart begin to heal. Slowly, the open wounds no longer hurt as much, and for the first time, Anna dreamed of the future, not the past. The family silence didn't last long. Days later, the messages began, disguised as concern. "Your mother is sad. You should think again. Family is what matters." Anna read everything in silence, without responding. Each message was an attempt to bring her back to her old role, that of the sister who fixes everything. In the family group, Dona Elena began posting verses about forgiveness. Carlos responded with ironic emojis. Anna no longer fell into the guilt trap. She left the messages there, hovering in the digital void, like ghosts of a life that no longer existed. But the loneliness began to take its toll. Sundays, once filled with noise, were now quiet. Anna spent the day reading, cooking for herself, and trying to fill the space with small routines. The silence was heavy, but little by little, she transformed it into companionship. One afternoon, while washing dishes, she received an unexpected call from Aunt Lucia, the only one who never took sides. "You did well, girl. Sometimes love needs distance to rebuild itself." Anna smiled, moved. "Will they ever understand?" Lucia replied, "Understand? Maybe not. But respect? One day, yes." Those words echoed in Anna's mind for days. Respect. It was what she had always wanted, more than forgiveness, more than recognition, just respect. At work, she began to stand out more. A new project placed her as a team leader, and this brought a different energy. She felt alive, useful, and independent. It was strange to realize that outside the family circle, she flourished. But at night, when I got home, the emptiness still ached. The echo of Sunday conversations, the sound of my mother's laughter, the smell of coffee, it all came back like stubborn memories. It was hard to accept that sometimes love also meant letting go. One of those nights, she decided to write a letter, not to send, but to release her grief. She wrote everything she'd never had the courage to say, the humiliations, the favoritism, the burden of being the strong one. When she finished, she folded the paper and put it away in a drawer. It was her private confession, her emotional finality. The tears came softly, calmly, almost sweetly. For the first time, they weren't cries of pain, but of liberation. Anna understood that she didn't need her family's approval to exist whole. Before going to sleep, she looked at her reflection in the mirror and said to herself, "I am not the ungrateful daughter. I am the daughter who woke up." Sunday dawned quiet. The sun filtered through the curtains and drew lines of light on the living room floor. Anna made coffee, sat at the table, and noticed the silence, the kind of silence that had previously suffocated her, but now began to make sense. It was strange, but deep down, she felt proud of having chosen herself.
Without the family circle, without the pressures, the days had a different rhythm. Sometimes loneliness weighed heavily. Other times it felt like an old friend. Anna read more, cooked for herself, and rediscovered simple pleasures. The smell of baking bread, the sound of rain, the calm of an afternoon without obligations. But there were times when the past insisted on visiting her. A song, a memory, an echo of her mother's voice. At those times, her chest tightened and doubt returned. Did I do the right thing? My heart wanted affection, my mind respect. I still didn't know if I could have both. During a late afternoon walk, Anna passed a family playing in the park. The little boy's laughter made her think of Mateus, her nephew. She remembered his innocent laugh before the cake fell. For a moment, resentment gave way to longing. Perhaps the boy had simply repeated what he saw his father do. Back at the apartment, she looked at the bookshelf and found an old photo. Her and Carlos, his children, sharing an ice cream. There was genuine joy there, a purity that time and envy had corrupted. Anna kept the photo, but not in the trash. She tucked it inside the book she was reading, like someone who keeps hope between the pages. The nights, however, were more difficult. The silence grew heavy, and the echo of loneliness pounded in her chest. Anna tried to distract herself with movies, but sometimes the emptiness spoke louder. It was the price of freedom. Being free is beautiful, but no one warns you that it also hurts, she thought quietly. At work, people began to notice something different about her. More confident, more serene, but with a distant look in her eyes. The kind of look of someone who's been through a war and survived. "You feel lighter," Marina said. "Maybe I'm just emptier," Anna replied, laughing at herself. Over time, he learned to accept his own silence. He stopped trying to fill it. He discovered that silence also speaks, and sometimes it speaks truths no one dares to speak. Before going to sleep, he wrote in his diary, "Freedom is lonely, but it's mine, and for the first time, no one can take it away." He closed the notebook and smiled. It wasn't much, but it was everything.
While Anna found peace in silence, Carlos descended into chaos. His car, a symbol of his status and vanity, began to malfunction. The canceled loan weighed heavily. Now he had to pay the installments alone, and the debts began to pile up. At work, the arrogance that once made him appear confident now isolated him. Colleagues drifted away, and mistakes, which Anna always helped correct, were piling up. Soon the complaints began. The favorite son's brilliance began to fade.
At home, Dona Helena tried to calm her son,
saying that Anna was confused and would soon change her mind. Carlos believed her. He continued spending as if nothing had changed. Pride was a fragile shield, but he didn't realize it yet. The nights, however, began to weigh heavily on him. The silence in the house, his mother's increasingly worried gaze, the phone that wouldn't ring. Carlos pretended not to care, but the emptiness bothered him. For the first time, he felt the bitter taste of abandonment, the same one Anna had felt so many times. One morning, he received a bank notification. The last installment hadn't been paid. He tried to call Anna, but the number was blocked. He threw his phone on the couch, irritated. "She'll come back, she always does," he muttered to himself, trying to believe it. But days turned into weeks, and Anna didn't return. The messages went unanswered. The car was impounded. His pride began to give way. Carlos realized he couldn't live without someone to fix what he broke, and this realization hurt more than any material loss. Donna Helena, increasingly tense, began to avoid him. The arguments escalated. "You need to apologize to your sister," she said, exhausted. Carlos locked himself in his room, furious, but deep down he knew his mother was right. He just didn't know how to admit it. One night, he looked at an old photo on the bookshelf. Him and Anna on her birthday, still teenagers. He remembered when she'd helped him get out of debt for the first time. At the time, he'd promised he'd change. He never did. But now, with nothing, no car, no applause, he felt something he'd never felt before: shame. He grabbed his phone, opened WhatsApp, and wrote a short message: "I'm sorry." He didn't send it. He stared at the screen, his finger hovering over the send button. Then he blocked his impulse. Pride still spoke louder, but now it was a muffled scream. And for the first time in a long time, Carlos cried alone. The phone rang one Saturday morning. Anna recognized her mother's number, and for a moment considered ignoring it, but something inside her, perhaps a remnant of old love, made her answer. "Hi, Mom." On the other end, a heavy silence. Then Donna Helena's trembling voice. "We need to talk." They met at a discreet cafe, away from the eyes of familiar faces. Helena arrived punctually, her eyes tired and her face drawn. "You know Carlos isn't well," she began, stirring the sugar in her cup. "He lost his job, his car was stolen, he's lost his place, Anna. And you're the only one who can help." Anna listened in silence. The old script repeated itself. She, the support; he, the protected. "Mom, I can't fix what he destroyed." Helena squeezed her daughter's hand across the table. "But he's your brother." Anna took a deep breath. "And I'm your daughter too."
The words came out calmly but firmly. Her mother looked away. For the first time, Anna saw weakness in that always rigid face. There was guilt, perhaps even regret, hidden beneath the wrinkles. "You've always been too strong, Anna. Maybe I forgot that you feel it too." The conversation ended with a hesitant hug. Neither of them apologized, but both understood that something had changed. Helena returned home with a heavy heart. Anna with a light but sad heart. Loving her family and protecting herself from them seemed like two opposing tasks. On the way back, Anna passed the same bank where she had canceled her loan months earlier. She sat in the same spot and watched the people rushing about. She remembered the feeling of relief and the fear that came with it. It was strange. The further she got away from the chaos, the more she realized how much of herself she had lost in that role of savior. That night, he wrote in his diary, "My mother didn't ask for help for Carlos. She asked me to go back to being who I was. But I can't. I don't want to." He put the notebook in the drawer and turned off the light. The silence now no longer hurt. It was companionship. Yet deep down, a seed had been planted. Her mother's gaze in that cafe wouldn't leave her mind. There was pain there, and as much as she wanted to walk away, Anna knew she wasn't ready to close the door completely yet. Carlos woke to the sound of his cell phone vibrating on the table. Overdue messages from the bank, billing notifications. The world seemed to fall apart a little more each day. He tried to laugh at himself, but the sound sounded hollow. The car was gone, so was his job. And his pride, his old shield, was beginning to crack. The house was silent. Helena avoided talking. She spent more time in her room, praying quietly. Carlos felt the weight of failure hanging over everything. "If only Anna would listen to me," he murmured. But deep down he knew the problem wasn't her silence. It was the echo of his own ego. He went out to look for a job, but the fake smiles and rejections tired him out. Each "will be in touch" felt like another rejection. He sat on a park bench and stared into space for the first time in a long time, unsure of what to do. That night he tried calling Anna again. The number was still blocked. He texted his mother, "She'll talk to me again, right?" Helena replied, "She needs time, son, and so do you." In the silence of the room, Carlos opened an old drawer and found an envelope. It was a copy of the car contract with Anna's name as guarantor. He ran his fingers over her signature and felt the weight of shame tighten his chest. "She believed in me," he whispered, "and I laughed at her."
That night, the tears came without warning. It wasn't the tears of someone feeling sorry for themselves, but the tears of someone who finally understands. They understand the harm they've caused, the love they've wasted, and that forgiveness isn't a right, it's a gift. The next morning, he woke up feeling different. He grabbed a box, gathered documents, and sold what was left of value, including the expensive watch Anna had given him for his previous birthday. He went to a used car lot and signed the sale papers. When the money arrived in his account, he felt a strange, almost sacred relief. "Now it's my turn to fix what I broke," he murmured. He took the envelope containing the money and put it in his pocket. He didn't yet know how or when, but he knew what he had to do: look his sister in the eye and return what she never asked of him: respect. The following weeks passed slowly, almost motionless. Anna followed her routine: work, coffee, reading, silence. But something inside her vibrated at a different tone. It was as if time were preparing for something. One Friday night, after a tiring day, she found on the bookshelf the diary she'd been keeping since graduation. As she flipped through the pages, she realized how much she'd changed. The woman who'd written the first lines was frail and tired. The one holding a notebook now was firm, whole, but with scars that still stinged. He took a loose leaf and began writing a letter. He wasn't sure to whom. The words flowed without thought. "You made me believe that love meant accepting disrespect. It took me too long to understand that love and obedience are not the same thing. Today I love myself enough to forgive you, but not to forget." He finished the letter and folded it carefully. It had no address, no name. It was a farewell to something that had never been said. He placed it in a box alongside other souvenirs, old photos, movie tickets, the graduation invitation still stained with whipped cream. As he packed everything away, he realized the weight he'd been carrying was beginning to dissipate. The past, however painful, now fit inside a box, and the present, though silent, was light. The next morning, he went to the park and sat on the same bench where he used to think about giving up everything. The wind blew gently, carrying the scent of wet trees. Anna closed her eyes and felt her face warmed by the sun. For the first time, he thought that perhaps there was room for forgiveness, not the kind that reconciles, but the kind that frees. That night, she called Aunt Lucia. "You know, I think I'm finally at peace." On the other end of the line, her aunt smiled. "Peace is when the past stops pushing you and the future stops scaring you." Anna was silent, her eyes welling up. That was exactly it.
He put away his cell phone and lay down. On his pillow, a strange sensation, as if something were approaching. A reunion, perhaps. A conversation he'd been waiting for years, even without knowing it. It was a typical Tuesday. The day dragged on with spreadsheets and emails when Marina entered her office with a curious look. "There's someone waiting for you in reception," she said. Anna frowned. "Who?" Marina hesitated. "Your brother." For a second, the ground seemed to disappear beneath her feet. The name, so long unspoken, echoed like thunder within her. "Carlos?" she asked, just to confirm the obvious. Marina nodded gently. "He said he doesn't want to fight. He just needs to give you one thing." Anna took a deep breath, trying to contain the flood of memories. She washed her face, fixed her hair, and walked to the reception desk. There he was, thin, haggard, with sunken eyes, but different. There was no arrogance in his expression, only weariness and regret. "Hi, Anna." Her voice was low, almost broken. She crossed her arms defensively. "What do you want, Carlos?" He pulled an envelope from his pocket. "I came to give you back the money for the car. I sold it, and this is the part I owe you." He held out the envelope, his hands trembling. Anna fell silent. The world around her seemed distant. She looked at the envelope, then at her brother. There was no sarcasm, no excuses, just truth, a kind of sincerity she had never seen in him. "I don't want your money, Carlos." He shook his head. "I don't want to rid myself of the guilt, either. I just want to give you back what was yours. And, if you'll allow me, I want to ask for your forgiveness. Not by text. Here." Anna's heart raced. For a moment she wanted to turn away, but something in her, perhaps the same love that sustained her when everything fell apart, made her stay. "It's okay," she replied, her voice husky. "We can talk, but not now, not here." Carlos nodded, excited. "Then tell me when. I'll wait." She took a deep breath. "Tomorrow, at the cafe on the corner, at 6. He smiled, a faint twinkle in his eyes. "I'll be there." When he left, Anna sat in the chair and stared at the envelope on the table. She didn't open it. She cried, not in pain, but in relief. It wasn't about money. It was about finally being seen, and about the beginning of something new, a fresh start that didn't erase the past, but redeemed it. The day dawned cold, with a light wind sweeping the streets. Anna spent the morning restless. She tried to work, but her thoughts kept returning to the same point, the meeting scheduled for 6. As if the clock was ticking too slowly, every minute was a reminder that something important was about to happen. At 5:30, he put on his coat and left the house. The cafe was 3 blocks away, a small, cozy place that smelled of freshly baked bread and freshly brewed coffee. When he arrived, she was already there, sitting by the window, her hands clasped together on the table. Carlos stood up as soon as he saw her. He was nervous, his shoulders hunched, his eyes tired. "Hi, Anna." She responded with a slight wave. She sat down slowly. The initial silence was heavy, the kind of silence that seems to fill the entire air. "Thank you for coming," he said finally. "I didn't think you'd accept." Anna glanced out the window before answering. I almost didn't come." He nodded, understanding. I deserved it. It took a while for him to actually speak. The words came out brokenly, but sincerely. "I laughed at you because it was easier than admitting I envied you. You were always everything I couldn't be. Responsible, strong, reliable, and I only knew how to pretend." Anna listened in silence, her heart heavy. The words hurt, but they also healed. "You hurt me, Carlos. More than you know." He took a deep breath. "I know, and there's no excuse for that. I can only say that now I understand what made you so tired, and I'm ashamed of having helped break you." The waiter brought 2 coffees, and the strong aroma of roasted beans hung in the air. Anna gripped the cup with both hands, trying to steady herself. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," she said, looking him in the eye. "But I think I can hear you." Carlos smiled, his eyes welling up. "That's more than I deserve." For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The cafe around them continued its normal rhythm: laughter, silverware, life. But for them, everything was suspended. It was the beginning of something fragile, but real. When they left, the sun was already setting, painting the sky orange. They walked together in silence, side by side, not touching, but not far apart. Forgiveness hadn't arrived, yet, but the wall between them was beginning to crumble. The next morning, Anna awoke with a strange feeling, a feeling of relief mixed with exhaustion. The encounter with Carlos hadn't resolved everything, but something inside her had finally settled. The past, though still present, felt lighter. Over coffee, she received a short message. "Thanks for yesterday. It was the first time I've been able to breathe in a long time." Anna read it, thought for a moment, and simply replied, "Me too." In the days that followed, communication between the two was discreet. Simple messages, brief exchanges. There were no promises or attempts to go back to the way things were. Neither wanted that. They simply wanted to learn to be different.
Donna Elena, upon learning of the reunion, cried. "Did you two talk?" she asked, sobbing. Anna nodded. "We talked." Her mother smiled with relief and guilt. "Maybe I was unfair to you, daughter." Anna was moved. Maybe we all were. Sunday arrived, and for the first time in months, Anna went to her mother's house. The table was set, simple, without fuss. Carlos was there, helping to arrange the dishes. When she entered, he looked over, and the smile they exchanged was shy but genuine. During lunch, the mood was awkward but serene. The words came slowly, the laughter was restrained but there. It wasn't the ideal family, it was a real family, imperfect, broken, but trying. At one point, Carlos stood up and brought a box. Inside was a small vanilla cake with strawberries. "It's not for graduation," he said awkwardly, "but it's what I could get." Anna looked at him in surprise. The simple gesture said more than any excuse. She picked up the knife and cut the first piece. The sound of the plate being placed on the table was the sound of a new beginning. "This time," she said, smiling, "no one drops anything on the floor." Everyone laughed, and for once the laughter didn't hurt. As she savored the cake, Anna reflected on how much family love is made of scars and how much courage it takes to not pretend they don't exist. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened, but it transforms what comes after. The afternoon sun filtered through the curtains of Doña Elena's house, illuminating the set table. It was a simple, unpretentious Sunday. The smell of home-cooked food filled the air. Fluffy rice, roast chicken, vanilla cake with strawberries in the center. Anna observed the details calmly.
Every dish, every fork, every gesture seemed a silent attempt at healing. Carlos stood beside his mother, helping to serve. He spoke little, but each word was measured and attentive. His eyes, previously arrogant, now changed. There was humility, perhaps even tenderness. When his eyes met Anna's, she saw something she had never seen before: respect. They sat down. The first minute was shy, filled with pauses and glances. Elena tried to break the ice with an old memory. "Do you remember when your father burnt the rice and no one had the courage to say anything?" The laughter that followed was small but genuine. For the first time, the laughter wasn't mocking. It was affectionate. During the meal, they talked about simple things: Anna's new job, the course Carlos had started to try to get back on his feet, his mother's medication. No drama, no pressure. Just a normal conversation, something that had seemed impossible months ago.
When lunch was over, Anna got up and went to the kitchen. She looked out the window and saw the backyard where she and her brother had played as children. The same ground, the same trees, but everything seemed different. Maybe it wasn't the place that had changed. Maybe it was her. Carlos appeared in the doorway. "The cake is waiting," he said, a little embarrassed. Anna smiled. "Let's go." They returned to the table. Helena served the cake with trembling but steady hands. The sweet scent filled the air. Before eating, Anna looked at her brother and said calmly, "I forgive you, Carlos. Not because I've forgotten, but because I don't want to carry the heavy burden anymore." He lowered his head, overcome with emotion. "Thank you. I promise I'll learn this time." The cake was cut, and each slice felt like a symbolic gesture, a distinct, balanced, fair division. No one laughed too loudly, no one talked about the past. The silence that filled the room now felt comfortable, almost sacred. After coffee, Carlos said goodbye with a sincere hug. "See you next Sunday?" he asked with a shy smile. Helena hesitated for a moment, but then replied, "See you next Sunday." It was a promise, not of perfection, but of presence. When he left, Anna stood in the doorway, watching the sky turn orange. Helena approached, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Are you okay, my girl?" Anna nodded, looking at the horizon. "I am, Mom. For the first time, I am." She walked back into the house and looked at the table. Simple, with still dirty dishes and cake crumbs. She smiled. That scene, imperfect and real, was the exact portrait of what she had always wanted. A family with cracks, but standing strong. Before turning off the lights, Anna thought, not all new beginnings are noisy. Some happen quietly, with a piece of cake and a sincere look. And it was like that, between crumbs and contained smiles, that Anna's family finally began to rebuild itself. Not the way it was before, but the right way. Forgiveness doesn't always come easily. Sometimes it's born of exhaustion, pain, and a piece of cake that's finally whole. If this story touched you, subscribe now, because here, each story is a reminder that even the deepest wounds can turn into new beginnings. You won't want to miss the next ones.